second. Am I recording? Looks like I am. Okay, so I just want to get started as to like what we're going to do today. So we have a bunch of stuff we're going to do. Ooh, it's a little grayed out. So today we're going to have an introduction. We're going to talk about what is the REIC and talk about essentially our ideas for this community land trust, collecting, pooling our money together. We'll have some like breakout rooms check-ins. We'll share our two wonderful organizations that we want to highlight them and spotlight their work. Do some more breakout room brainstorming amongst all of us. Do a mutual aid swap and talking about working groups and next steps. So this is we're going to try to facilitate this like a collective meeting. So there's going to be a bunch of us talking to each other either on Google Slides or maybe in small groups. So right now, introduction, who are we? We're Cooperative, we're a cooperative and this meeting is facilitated by the co-leadership. My name is Dan Taeyang and I'm one of us and you can read more here. And maybe really briefly the other co-leadership members here can go around and introduce themselves. Maybe we can say a name, yeah, we can just like kind of popcorn out.
Hi, Tadarina, he, him. I'm a member of the co-leadership. Thank you all for coming.
Hi, I'm Mara, she, her. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, my name is Rafael Jose, he, him.
I think other folks, Adele.
Sorry, I said it, but I was muted. I'm Adele, she, her, co-leadership member.
Okay, wonderful. And I also will recognize that there are a lot of people who have been part of the RIC that is not the co-leadership board. That involves many, many, many people, many of whom are on this call. So I'm very excited and want to really recognize that this is like it has been a collective effort for a bit. So really glad we're all here together. And then before we get started, I just want to talk about land a little bit. You know, the New York City Real Estate Investment Cooperative we're talking about real estate, we're talking about land, and want to do an acknowledgement of the fact that both New York City is a city shaped by racist histories of redlining, financial practices that actively discriminated and created different zones based off of kind of racial criteria. And then also we're well, I say we, if you're in New York City, sitting right now as I am, we're in occupied Lenape territory. And one thing that I've been sitting with and thinking about a lot is that actually the Lenape tribe that whose territory we're occupied on was both a matrilineal and matrilocal society, which is to say families were organized around the mother and families would kind of live in proximity to kind of the matrilineal lineage of family power. So I want to sit with that and the notion that we're talking about land, we're talking about community land ownership, and really want to recognize the histories in which we are trying to alter or work against or work to recuperate or work to hold in our minds while we think about what is kind of a just and a just way of creating spaces for each other. Okay, so I'm going to mix things up a little bit. I'm sure you've all been in a gazillion Zoom meetings. This is a Google Slides that is globally editable. Anyone who has the link can edit it. And I just posted the link in the chat. So it means that you all can edit it. And so if you go here, I just want to take a few minutes to just ask, what brings you here? So if you go to that link, I think this is slide, I'm not quite sure which slide this is, but I'm sure you can find it. And I'll ask you the question, if you imagine the New York City you want to live in, what kind of community or organization would you want to see or even see in your neighborhoods? So I'll ask you to think about that for a second, and maybe we can actually edit this slide together and like type it in here. So I'll take a few seconds to think about this as 76 people join this collective Google Slides. It's on slide 8. That's where we're going. So come on in here. And if you don't have access to the slides, or if it's cumbersome, you can also just like post it on the in the chat. And I'm sure you're all here for a variety of reasons. We're all bringing different kind of expertise, relationships to the city, hopes and dreams. So yeah, if you imagine the New York City you want to live in, what kind of community organization would you want to see in your neighborhoods? Feel free to use the boxes, copy someone else's boxes. You can add into someone else's boxes. There's lots of room. Let's continue. I'm just switching my screen, but let's just continue doing the same thing. So I'm just making sure that we can all see all these different suggestions come in live in real time. Whoops, let me try that again. So yeah, let's continue adding this, and I'm gonna re-share my screen 1 second. Okay, it looks like we might have accidentally deleted the slide. I love it. This is what community looks like. It sometimes means that we make messes. It's great. But that's okay. We can probably find it back. Sure, we can go into the past and dredge it up. Can we do that? Can we do that live? Or you can just watch me go into the history. I don't know, but I do remember seeing a lot of really wonderful things in the slides. Oh, I see it somewhere here. Okay, so it's in our history. This is great. And I remember seeing a lot of really amazing things. And I really appreciate all of the contributions that were there. I'm gonna go back to the present. This is great. But I saw a lot of like ends of libraries, things like that. I love this. So I think I'd love to continue going forward. We're going to do this a few more times. So very excited to try this out. Maybe by the end of the meeting, one of us can go into the history and try to copy and paste it into a different slide. Maybe could one of the co-leadership groups volunteer to do that? Okay, Todd says Todd will do so. Great, wonderful. So very excited to do that. And so I'm going to continue introducing folks and then get to a point where I'm not talking anymore. So please wait until the slide loads. Okay. So I'm going to share this quick video on the New York City Real Estate Investment Cooperative. It's a little... Bear with us. And hopefully, this is on our website, so you can also watch it on your own if you wish, but I'm going to play it live for us. We can kind of get sync on like the 1-minute version. We're going to share then kind of the 5 or 10-minute version. And then if you really want more information, we have various different recordings and can talk about the 1 hour, 1 day version. So I'm going to share this real brief, and we'll watch this for a minute.
We want to live in a New York City of community prosperity,
where small businesses, local culture, and civic groups thrive.
but everywhere we look, rising rents are forcing out the small and the local.
So we got together to do something about it. We asked ourselves, what if investment in real estate and concern for local community went together?
We're creating a mechanism for community-based real estate investment. It's called a real estate investment cooperative.
Here's how it works. Anyone can join. Members make a $10 investment and get 1 vote.
We democratically select and secure commercial space and create a legal framework with community oversight that guarantees affordable rent forever.
In just 3 months, we have over 300 members working together to save the New York City we love from vanishing.
If we want equitable, local, and healthy economies, we know what to do. Leverage our power to secure and finance the commons.
Okay, so that's the 1-minute version. And would like to continue talking about the New York City NYC REIC. And what is the NYC REIC? It's New Yorkers Investing in Neighborhoods. I'll introduce the really short version, and then I'll pass it along to Mara, who will continue to introduce us. So what does this look like? The really quick summary is, we talk to an organization whose mission we support. We collaborate and fundraise collectively and invest to purchase property. We create a community land trust, which is a legal structure that helps land be permanently affordable in perpetuity. This CLT is governed by members of the community and members of the organization, and we are also open to other permanent affordability or stewardship models. So with that said, I would love to pass this on to Mara and the rest of the co-leadership team to describe what the NYC REIC is.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mara Kravitz. I am a member of the co-leadership team. There's 7 of us. And I will share today who we are, what we've done so far, and how we move forward. So first, who we are. We are a co-op. We are owned by our members. There are 605 members as of today. So if you're a member, hello, and you own this thing. If you are not a member, you can join at our website, nycreic.com/join. So all co-ops, what they have in common is that they are jointly owned and democratically controlled by all their members, and they're brought together by common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations. So next slide, please. So I wanted to name a few needs and aspirations that are in this room, and the exercise that we did where we were putting together those our boxes and our wishes definitely speak to this. So this is some, I would love if this speaks to you to raise your hand, do one of these. So some of us are here because they hope the REIC, one of the reasons we formed, is a way to invest in our city's cultural, community, arts, business, and cooperative spaces, especially those that are at risk of displacement, so that they can be stable. REIC is a way for people who run community spaces that are mission aligned to access non-predatory financing for their communities and those in solidarity with them. The REIC is a way to fund the commons, to remove land from the speculative market so it can be stewarded for the common good for the long run and live a fate greater than profit for the ultra wealthy. The REIC is a way to fund the community land trust movement, which Black farmers started during the 1960s civil rights movement and which continues in many neighborhoods of NYC today. The REIC is a way to invest one's savings that isn't, as it turns out a lot of traditional finance is, extractive and predatory. We aim for an alternative that supports life. Finally, the REIC is a way to transform the racial hierarchy through critical awareness about how racist processes like settler colonialism, slavery, redlining, and urban renewal, how they impacted access to land ownership and capital. Through an intersectional approach, we aim to take strategic collective action towards justice and equity. So the final line in the slide is an inspiration from the natural world. It is real. Forests are connected by mushrooms underground that redistribute their nutrients. So that for me is an inspiration. You can read more about that in a book called Braiding Sweetgrass that I'm reading. So that's it for who we are. Next slide, please. So what have we done so far? In that video, you saw a meeting in 2015. That was our first meeting, and we've been around for 5 years. And in those 5 years, we have done 3 key things to meet our common needs and aspirations. 1, we've created a nonprofit co-op with bylaws that outline how we're democratically controlled, including voting on both investment projects and co-leadership. It's 1 member, 1 vote, no matter how much money is invested. And any New Yorker who accepts the membership agreement can join, and you can do that on our website. 2, we've gained approval from the New York State Attorney General to crowd raise from our members funds to invest in real estate that will support long-term stability, diversity, vibrancy, and cohesion in New York City neighborhoods most affected by disinvestment and displacement. These investments follow the patient capital model of modest long-term returns. And 3, finally, we've become a gathering space. We're partly a school, REICU, where our member form work groups lead popular education about co-ops, urban planning, real estate, community land trust, and the commons, about investment, finance, and spatial justice. Our members create educational tools, art, and media. We've also become a place for community groups, co-ops, and small businesses to share their campaigns to protect community spaces or secure stable homes. And you'll hear from 2 of those groups today. It's a way to spread the word about these projects and to connect members who want to help through volunteering, bartering, mutual aid, or other exchanges. It's also a potential spot on the path towards collective investment. So that's what we've done so far. Next, how do we move forward? Next slide, please. Specifically, how do we invest in a place or places? So this is how the process works in 3 steps. The first, a member or any New Yorker suggests a potential project to the co-op. You can also do this on our website. There's a suggest link. You can call us, you can email us. A member of the co-leadership team or a member, or if a work group is organized at the time to do it, works with that potential partner to check if the mission aligns. Step 2, if the mission aligns, it's time to do feasibility planning. What's the property? What's the price? What kind of loan are the organization's finances able to support? What's the investment amount for members? How much would we need to raise from how many members? What could be expected as returns and when? And also, what's the exact plan for long-term affordability and community stewardship? Once a sound plan is in place, it's time to move on to step 3, getting investment ready. That's when we'll vet more tightly to make sure all is financially and logistically sound and come up with an exact investment plan. Offering documents will get drafted, bank accounts will get ready. Then the co-leadership would bring the project to the membership for a final vote. And if the membership voted to invest, then investment can begin. Right now, there's a handful of projects that are at different stages of this process. None of them have made it through all of it. We're an all-volunteer organization with no paid staff, so we need help from a lot of people to make it all happen. And there are many ways to help, and we'll share some of those ways today. Next slide. A final note about how we move forward through project planning and the vetting process. In 2016, the project scoping work group led by members brought our membership through a collective process to create a set of criteria that guides our investments based on the common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations. You can find that on the Invest page of our website. This document can be used when moving through the 3 stages outlined on the last slide. So that's how we move forward into investment. It starts with a conversation and it grows into reality. Now I will turn it over to fellow co-leader Todd, who will talk a bit more about the logistics.
Thank you, Mara. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to do a very brief overview. As Mara mentioned, we have an approval from the New York State Attorney General's office, specifically the Real Estate Finance Bureau, which is the regulator for security raisings in New York State. So they're the one that regulates these types of activities. And the approval that we received from them allows us to seek investment capital from our members, and it allows us to get around some of the more restrictive red tape that goes along with other sorts of capital raising securities issuances that you may have heard about in the news or may not have. And what it allows us to do is, so we are a not-for-profit corporation that is member controlled, so members control it. And in order to raise investment capital, we create LLCs that are under the control of the not-for-profit member-controlled cooperative. And that LLC allows us to pool member investments and then turn around and make loans or other types of investments in our project partners within certain restriction limits. And if I could get the next slide, please. And just to make it a little more clear, because I know that's a lot to process and to sort of hear about. And so I'll just do a very brief, this is a very dense slide. Hopefully it can help make it a little less dense. But so starting with the people over here, that's us. We always start with the people. So we come together and we create a cooperative, in this case, an investment cooperative. And then those members become members, and the members of the cooperative become members of the New York City, the NYC REIC Inc., which is the not-for-profit that's member controlled. And what that means is through that, every member has one vote in line with our cooperative principles. So as a member of the REIC Inc., the actual member-controlled nonprofit cooperative, that means you get to vote equal to anyone else by becoming a member, including things like electing board members, co-leadership members such as yourself, and hopefully you someday, as well as, more importantly, deciding on what is an appropriate project partner for the cooperative. So what is an appropriate investment for your neighborhoods through making a decision as part of the cooperative. And you don't have to plan to invest in or not. You can vote on it, whether or not you vote with respect to a specific, or plan to invest with respect to a specific project. So let's assume, Mara mentioned all the criteria and the process for approving. There's vetting and member input, and then a final member vote. Let's assume something passes that. Then what we do, that's when we create the LLC to pool member funds, and each member, regardless of how they voted, gets to choose for themselves whether they invest in that project by investing in the LLC, and the amounts of that can, are project specific. Each one will look different, but we aim to have them as low in amounts as possible. So the LLC will correct member votes and investments, and then it will turn around and invest in the project partner. So we pool our money to help our project partners achieve their goals, including the goal of creating permanently affordable, community stewarded, community-owned land through certain structures, for example, a community land trust. So that's the upfront. And then over time, the project partner will pay back the members. And I want to point out that what we hope to achieve is where people that are part of projects will also be members, so they'll be effectively investing in themselves, or people in their neighborhood will be investing in a project in their neighborhood that they believe in, so that members become both figuratively and literally invested in their neighborhoods, and have a stake in making sure that these community supported projects succeed. And what happens over time is those projects will then pay back the members, and that's represented by this green line down here that goes up to paying back the members, which we hope will also be members of the communities and perhaps the projects themselves. That pay back the money that they invested with a small amount of return, and that will be determined by each project by what they can afford to pay. And you could think of it similar to a mortgage, except that unlike a mortgage, we can't foreclose on it because of the community-owned, community-stewarded aspect of it, that there's no risk of that property being taken back and then sold to somebody else through this structure. And that's a critical difference, as well as the fact that ordinary people can be involved in it. And another piece to point out is there's also a tiny portion of it will likely go to cover the administrative expenses, hopefully including staff, potentially community organizers, things like that, expenses that go along with this process. And if we go back just to the last slide. So I stepped through that incredibly quickly. That's a very dense slide. There's a lot of information there. What I would like to encourage everyone on this call to do is please go to our website. Please go to this section right here under webinars. And there's a webinar there where I step through this process much more slowly with an incredible amount of detail that I think should be a very useful thing for everyone on this call to take the time to review if you have questions about how this works and the nuts and bolts and the nitty gritty. And with that, being a lawyer, I'm going to cede my space back to the rest of my co-leadership so as not to take up too much of our space here.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Mara. Yes, there's like so much thought gone into this. I really second what Todd said about checking this out. And also maybe you know, there's been a lot of work done. Maybe you have some ideas, maybe you have some experience. We'd love for, you know, us to kind of talk together about that. I think this is the more eyes and thought about the model, I think is really appreciated. And so I just want to kind of refresh back to the really simple summary, the 30-second one, hopefully. We talk to an organization whose mission we support. We collaborate and fundraise and collectively invest to purchase property, and we create a community land trust, or use some other permanent affordability or stewardship models, and create a legal structure that helps the land be permanently affordable in perpetuity. It's kind of the overall idea, and we'd love to talk about it. Do we have any questions? So maybe one way to do questions is we can try to do a short Q&A in the chat. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write them out here. And then I know there'll probably be a lot more questions potentially, and then we can try to either address that or like turn that into some kind of project energy. So if you have any questions, feel free to, write them in the chat. It's possible that we don't have questions either. Yeah. Oh, we have questions. This is wonderful. So some are. So maybe what we can do is we'll. Actually, I will try to copy paste these into the chat, the slides as well, and then maybe Mara and the rest of the co-leader and Todd and Raf and the co-leadership team, we can answer some, and then we can also kind of leave these as questions that maybe the REIC we should collectively answer to. So I can speak a little bit to the community orgs we partner with. we have, I think we showed above, we have a project criteria that we developed as an idea to make sure that a project has kind of mission alignment. And then the idea is that once those criteria are passed, there would be a collective vote with the cooperative to decide, like, yes, this is an organization that we do want to partner with. So I think Mara mentioned this in this slide, where there's a mission alignment process, a feasibility planning process, and then getting the investment ready. So there are these kind of stages where, you know, we might find groups that are mission aligned. Once that happens, we would kind of have more resources into understanding feasibility and capacity. Are there other questions that Mara, you'd want to say something about?
I threw the link in to the chat so people can check out the criteria more if they'd like. And let's see. So the criteria to the second question about how you pick the sites, the criteria also helps guide that. And it's based on the local organizers, typically. So the question about how properties would be operated and maintained after they are purchased. So the REIC is, it's a meeting space to have conversations like this, and it is a co-op that gives loans to community organizations. So you'll hear from two organizations today. So though we might be involved in a long-term relationship or partnership with these groups, the day-to-day of how the space would be run, it's very much based on the groups that we'd be giving loans to. So we ourselves are not, in this version of ourselves, space stewards. We're not trying to buy a spot to own and run together, as nice as that might be. We're specifically set up to support community organizers and nonprofits and small businesses and co-ops as they come to form and already exist in their communities.
Mara, do you mind if I jump in?
Please.
I just wanted to respond to the one about other similar land trusts or co-ops doing similar work. I can cede space to others who want to talk about New York, but I can definitely address the outside of New York aspect. The East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative in Oakland has a very similar model. They're specifically focused on residential, which is a different model from what we're doing. We're looking at community cultural space and mixed use, perhaps multi-residential. If it meets the criteria, and there's several others that sort of are in the same zone. If you go to the resources page in that webinar that I referred us all to, it speaks about it. There's a group in Atlanta. There's a group in Boston, the Boston Ujima Project, which is actually expansive beyond the limits and is just sort of a place-based governance model that also includes a community-controlled investment project aspect of it that's in land and expands beyond just in land. Northeast Investment Cooperative was an early inspiration for ours. So those are the ones that I'm most familiar with. And I can also address the question about what we've been up to. So one of the things, so we've been working closely with the projects that have been, selected and long-term working with us, such as Flux Factory in Long Island City. The issue there is that most of the financing for the actual acquisition of that partner's project was coming from the City of New York, and due to the recent crisis in the global, the entire planet, including the global economy, which affects New York City, there's been delays related to that based on New York City. And so, you know, those are some of the main things, as well as, so there's been a lot of assistance working through mission alignment, things like that, making sure the financing still works, but also just the fact of the world has changed dramatically, and that has changed a lot of things.
Can I maybe jump in just to answer the question from Amy Chang? Do you assist with finding a site for purchase, or is it up to the community organization to bring this as part of the selection process? And I would say that as many cases as we have, or as we've had so far, it's always a different situation. So there are organizations who have a site, maybe they have a site where they already are and they want to be able to buy it. Maybe there are different organizations that want to join together and find a site. So we very often at our meetings, well, when we used to have in-person meetings, it's also about matching up organizations, potential sites, different neighborhoods. So every case can be a different situation.
Okay, just in terms of time, we're going to keep on going, although these questions are all really important and really are important to answer, and that we've thought about too, which is really exciting. So I will say that maybe this is something that we could answer offline and then kind of respond to folks who have been on this call. So let's go forward, continuing. We've been talking for a lot. In fact, we've been talking for 45 minutes. And so we'd love to do some breakout rooms really quickly, interludes, just to kind of get each other talking. Because at the end of this, we'll do a kind of mutual aid swap. And I would love to encourage y'all to focus your energies in thinking about like what kind of space do we want to create. So the question I'll use to prompt is, imagine if a building or an existing storefront in a neighborhood you know was permanently affordable to support mission-driven organizations. What kind of things would you hope to happen there? So it's similar to the one we asked in the first one, but I think this is kind of a nice chance for us to kind of see each other move into breakout groups. I'm going to make these breakout groups, so there's going to be 4 people per room. We might talk a little bit. I will set a timer until basically 8:51, which is about 5 minutes, and we'll have a short conversation. This is so that maybe we can get our ideas rolling in terms of like on our for each of us, how could we participate? What are the specific things we could do, either as part of the REIC or in general to support organizations like this? So I'm creating the breakout groups now, and I will see you all in 8:51. And I will also notice that the breakout groups are not recorded, just so you know. The recording is not done there, so feel free to speak freely. Hello, everyone here. I think you're here and you're not in breakout groups, which is fine. Feel free to not be in them too. Welcome back. Hi, everyone. Was it too short? Was it too long? No. Was that kind of awkward? Maybe.
That was great.
Can't help it. Gotta end sometimes.
Okay. Oh, everyone's back. Is everyone back? Hi, all. Welcome back.
Like he.
Hopefully that was kind of nice just to chat. So would really love, I'm very excited to get to a really important part of our meeting, which is to present to wonderful organizations that we want to support and highlight who are trying to find and purchase spaces for the organizations. Without further ado, I'll introduce, I'll ask, next up is May Day. I'm really excited for May Day to present because it's also a space that the RAC has met before at. So yeah, without further ado, I'll let Mayday introduce themselves. This is very exciting for us to like highlight them. So Mayday Space.
Great. Hello, everyone. So I'll just dive right in. My name is Rahel Baru. I go by she, her. I am a member of the Collective, which is sort of the board of directors of Mayday. We are a 501c3. I'm also a staff member there. My job is host and caretaker. So this physical space is kind of my top priority, making sure that it's all the technology is working. People, especially in this COVID time, people are like following the rules, that there's supplies there for everyone to keep safe. And you know, before COVID hit, when folks were coming into the space to use it for their events, I would either train them or support them in setting up and making sure they had a great event, one that was, you know, beneficial for both us and their group. So we can go to the next slide. The idea behind May Day, the group is 5 years old, 6 years old. It formed out of, you know, the call to action around the People's Climate March and all these groups that had, you know, been talking to each other at Occupy, the first Occupy in 2011, sort of reconvened and worked on the People's the People's Climate March, and figured out that they had a lot more in common, and that also, you know, something was missing in New York City around infrastructure that could help more projects that they wanted to work on. And so the reason that the name May Day was chosen is because it means a whole lot of things to different groups. One is that it's a distress signal and a call to action. Another meaning is that it's a raucous and beautiful celebration of rebirth and springtime and rejuvenation. It also is the commemoration of International Workers' Day, and we are a left-wing organization. We are movement space, but we're left-wing. And it is, yeah, that is, we try to encompass all those ideas into our work and our mission. So yeah, this is you know, one of the best parties we had in the last 5 years was something called Halfa en el Barrio, and this is a picture from that where it was about maybe 2 months after Trump was elected, and maybe not 2 months after Trump was elected, but it was around the Muslim ban, and you know, there was a need to bring the communities from the immigrant communities of New York City who were from Middle Eastern descent and from Latinx descent, to bring them together and, you know, have an uplifting, beautiful moment. So this is where this picture comes from. But yes, May Day is a community space, but it's a citywide destination, even though we are very committed to Bushwick, and it's a neighborhood resource for grassroots organizing, political education, and culture and celebration. Next slide. So where we are right now is a church that's owned by the Episcopal Diocese out in Long Island. We are firmly on the border of Ridgewood and Bushwick. You know, I think we want to stay there, but yeah, Bushwick is, you know, really where a lot of our members and collective members are from or live. And in this space, we have access to 3 floors, 2 kitchens, and a really large great hall. I know REIC has been, members have been here. I would say, you know, we've had wedding receptions, we've had wrestling matches, we've had, you know, gallery openings, you know, really anything that your mind can fathom has happened at Mayday, Mayday space. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. And this is Star Bar. Something that I sort of glossed over in the introduction is that the original idea for Mayday space was a sort of all-in-one encompassing space where there was a place to learn on the top floor, you know, classrooms and screening rooms. And then after you were sort of done with your work, you could go down and enjoy a meal and a drink at the bar. And, you know, unfortunately, we were not able to stay together, but Star Bar is less than a 10-minute walk away, and is very near and dear to our hearts. The owners are, you know, part of our crew, part of our family, and it's one of the only spaces, you know, only bars in Brooklyn that, you know, is especially designed and catering to movement groups to have, you know, similar groups, similar events that Mayday has. One of my comrades want to take it away for this next slide.
Hey everyone, I'm LJ. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm also a collective member of Mayday. And so Rahel mentioned the original vision for Mayday about 6 years ago, and part of the ethos of Mayday has always been about being financially sustainable. And so Star Bar was part of that, is part of that vision about having a sister space that generates income that can funnel into Mayday, so that Mayday is not dependent on the nonprofit industrial complex. We know that philanthropy is not sustainable, and that we really want to have an autonomous movement space that isn't dependent on philanthropy in that way. So what we mean, but when we talk about a movement space, is both a physical space, which Mayday is. It's 3 floors and has a library, a radical library, an art space, and gathering rooms. So we mean a physical space, and also mean a gathering space that brings together the different facets of grassroots work. So we host organizing meetings, we host political education workshops, we host direct action trainings, art builds, cultural work, language classes, dance classes. We're really trying to be a space that holds the different expressions of political activity. We also see ourselves as being a space where people can get out of their silos. We are a space is really accessible for campaigns. So intersectionally and doing work that is cross issue. And then also, as I said before, that the essential to the ethos of Mayday is that we are an alternative to the exploitative economy. So we are collectively run. We have a lot of volunteers that throw down really hard, things happen. Our space is extremely accessible because we operate on a sliding scale. Membership, bartering, co-ops, these are all part of how we see Mayday be run. And then last, Mayday is really essential infrastructure for grassroots organizing. If we can't gather, we can't work together, and then we can't win. So we really understand ourselves as being essential infrastructure for collaboration and for celebration. So next slide. So just to give you a sense of what happens inside Mayday, we have piñatas of Donald Trump. We have concerts. We have, oops, can you go back to the photos? Thank you. We have community dinners on the bottom left-hand corner. We have concerts. Oh, keep going. Sorry, can you stay on that slide for just 1 second? So you just get a sense of the variety of different events that we have here. So yeah, next slide, please, for the COVID. So when COVID-19 hit New York, Mayday, collective members within Mayday, which are 9 of us, got together over Zoom to think about how we could respond to this moment. We very much are physical space, but also we see ourselves as a social hub. And so we wanted to be able to use our space safely and responsibly, because we believe organizing is essential work right now. Prioritize mutual aid work, particularly food distribution. We moved a lot of our program online, which Rahel is going to talk about in a second. And then because we are this social hub and we are a trusted resource in the city, we were able to facilitate citywide conversations, and then especially focusing in North Brooklyn. So we were facilitating calls between stakeholders about how to reach a moment in North Brooklyn. And then lastly, we've been using this opportunity to build with other organizations like us, other movement spaces, particularly in Brownsville and East New York. So next slide. So food distribution mutual aid started at the end of March, and every Wednesday we've been bringing in some of our volunteers, and in a socially distant assembly line style, we have been assembling grocery bags that go to distribution to families in NYCHA housing across Bushwick, Brownsville, and East New York. So together with our partner organizations, we've been doing 2,000 bags a week. And Dan, if you could go to the next slide, we're going to watch a short video.
Someone who also grew up in a church setting, it was sort of drilled into me from the beginning of my child and adulthood to serve the community, because a lot of the communities of color in New York City over the past decades since the 1970s have been systematically disinvested. There's also the issue of property taxes and things of this nature that are not attributed to every neighborhood, every zip code. The momentum and the inertia is to give richer communities, whiter communities, the first dibs, essentially, on aid work. Through a connection that Mayday had with another food justice organization, we were able to join forces and not only serve NYCHA homes through a special program with City Harvest, but also were able to take some of the excess donations and push them towards the Bushwick Mutual Aid and undocumented and migrant community here in Bushwick.
Mutual aid, people, neighbors who are helping neighbors are jumping up, they're filling information gaps, so they're calling people who might not have Wi-Fi, who might not be plugged into the neighborhood network that is the resilient neighborhood networks that have always existed. There are people who just aren't captured by those. So these groups are stepping in and making sure people have information. They're making sure people have access to food. They're getting on bikes and delivering food to people who can't leave their house. We started doing intensive phone banking, and one of the very first calls I made was to an older gentleman who had just lost his wife within 24 hours in the home. She died in the home because the hospital said she shouldn't come in yet. She didn't have enough symptoms. The folks that, essentially we've been building this relationship with, although on the terms of here's food, here's something that you need, hopefully we can transform that relationship from just a model of providing basic needs to a model of building a relationship that holds space for a conversation around the things that have led us to this moment.
So as you saw, Rahel held some of the dirt that has been going out in the bags. So the assembly of food has been both course, about meeting people's material needs, but it's also been about building the bigger we, and we use that opportunity as a chance to get people political education and know your rights materials. So within the grocery bags, we've been sending out know your rights as a tenant and what your options are right now around rent striking. We've been sending out bilingual materials about access to mental health services right now. And also we've been sending out literature around how to get involved in the North Brooklyn pipeline fight right now, which is a fracked gas pipeline being built in North Brooklyn. So yeah, so that just feels like classic May Day right there, or that building that bridge between meeting people's material needs and then also doing the political education component. So I'll pass it back to you, Rahel.
Thank you, LJ. So we wanted to also give you guys a sense of the programming that Mayday has been coordinating almost, since the very beginning of the COVID hitting, and even before COVID, Mayday would plan and host, maybe like one programming event a season and push all our volunteers towards that. But because we moved virtually and a lot of people had more free time, we were able to do, almost one event a week. And so this slide that you're seeing right now gives some example, but not even the full example of the calls and panels and educational events and classes that we were able to offer, providing for the herbal home health remedy. We're able to split the profits of the class, and I wanted to show some of the work that, or not the work, but the performances and the programming that we had. I don't know if it'll look so great on the open mic one, but we do have a YouTube channel where you can look at the recordings of all our programming. And furthermore, I think, it would give you a good idea of the kind of stuff that we want to have in the space once the space is opened up. We have never done an open mic before. And the one that we did put on with, special great shout out to Ileana, who's also on our collective, was so great and had such great vibes that we can't wait to do it again. So, just a silver lining on all this. Maybe we can go to the next two slides. The next slide. Yeah, so please watch these videos. I'm not sure if it's gonna be too choppy, and I wanna, save time for people on this call. So go to our YouTube. Sandy?
Are we skipping the videos?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be too choppy.
Okay. Okay, so my name is Sandy. I go by she, her. I'm part of Mayday Collective. We've been working on a new space for a long time. And so over the last year and a half, we've spent some time really mapping out, like, what do we need? And having built a movement space and all of, having had so many different groups utilize the space over the past 5 years, we've really come to understand, like, what do movements need? What do community groups need? And so we've identified that we really need a space that's ADA compliant. So right now we operate out of an Episcopalian church that we have a handshake agreement with, a partnership agreement with, and we don't have any legal tenure, but there's so many upgrades we'd love to do. It's really challenging to think about investing deeply in a space that we have no permanent ownership of and permanent decision-making power of. So some of the things that we would love to have but are restricted from having are an ADA compliant space, the ability to generate our own energy, so having solar panels on our roof, being able to redecorate the space, being able to host groups at hours that are non-traditional. We'd love to have a commercial space or retail space that's either serving food or a place for gathering, or a bookstore, and a place that we can be able to have folks hang out. Right now we are, we don't have a space where folks can just come in, pop in at any time of the day and really chill, relax. learn about things going on. It's really restricted to if you've booked the space and have the time. And then our business model is really based on the fact that we have multiple different rooms and floors that we can book at the same time, which helps both generate income, but also allows for that kind of organic relationship building, the breaking down of silos between different movements, the fact that like all sorts of different activities are happening at the same time is a really important part of the DNA of Mayday, and allows us to really have programming that's super relevant at the time of different movement moments. Next slide. And so we've been really working for the last year and a half, both to get alignment within our collective / board, and also to hear from other groups who have owned property, who have held property in a collective way, to learn those lessons and to understand what went wrong and what could be done better. And over the last year and a half, we've really dreamed of getting a building, something that we could really tailor the infrastructure of that building to specifically serve the needs that we have seen from different movement groups, multi-use, cooking facilities, gathering space, smaller classroom space, growing space, and also the ability to have different types of social enterprises anchor our building as a place for people to gather and get to know each other without having to have booked the space. So some of the things that we've had in the past but never really were able to take off because of the limitations of not being legally able to have permanent rights to the building, and then therefore like limiting our ability to deeply invest, or having like a recording studio, having a rooftop farm, which we did have when we were above Star Bar during the People's Climate March. There was a rooftop farm that started, but we lost that. Huge art production space, which has been such an important part of Mayday and Mayday's story, is like the visuals that come out of our space and supporting movements and telling their stories. So we really want to have a space that has a lot of different uses and functions from a lot of different people. Next slide. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about this. We ideally want 10,000 square feet, multiple floors. We've been in Bushwick for a very long time. This is where we started. This is where we've spent the most time building deep community relationships and are working incredibly hard to deepen those relationships. And so we don't want to just move and parachute into a different neighborhood. We really want to be here. We've never been in the red. We have a really good business model based on underutilized space and community partnerships. So when we met the Bushwick Abbey, Iglesia de la Santa Cruz, they were utilizing the space one time a week, and they had all this space, and so we filled it up, and they weren't looking for like market rates. So we've really been able to have a good business model there. And our current operating model allows for $3,500 a month in expenses, but we know that with a space really connected, really tailored to what we need, in a space that we own and can like deeply invest in and like outfit and tailor to what we need and what the groups who utilize the space need, we could generate more. So we've been a very successful business model. Next slide. And I'm gonna blow through this because I'm being mindful of time. So we have a couple different paths we've identified. We've been in conversation and relationship with REIC for a long time. There's a couple different ways we could go. We could purchase land or a building outright that's held by Mayday Space, and ideally that space becomes held in a trust that's either connected to different land trusts that are around us. You know, there's an East New York Land Trust, there's others in the area. So we would ideally like fold into some of the existing networks that are trying to lift up this type of work, and Mayday could hold it outright, or we could go in on a building and some land with partners. And so we've been looking at both. We've been having conversations with a bookstore and a cafe and even a bank at different points, a cooperative bank. and have thought about what does it look like to have joint ownership or collective ownership of a space that serves a lot of different needs. And we've spent a lot of time talking with our bank. We bank cooperatively. We are with the Brooklyn Federal Co-op, and we qualify for $400,000 in purchasing power, and we are hoping to get to $100,000 to maybe put down on a space. Next slide. So we've been searching in the last year. We've spent, we encountered some very serendipitous relationships. We spent a lot of time walking down the path with a building on Hart Street in St. Nicholas. It was a 3-story building that, unfortunately, while it was potentially the price was right, it had a lot of building violations that would have been very, very expensive for us to undo, and then additionally require a lot of changing of the space to make it work for the way we operate. We formed a future space committee, and so we for the last year have been power mapping our fundraising networks. We've spent time identifying spaces that are for sale in this area, both vacant private land and land with buildings on it, and we've been working slowly on connecting with those folks. We've done outreach to different partners, so we are in motion. We are very actively pursuing land. We've been calling folks recently in the last week of spaces we've been looking at. Mayday is very much ready to move on this, and the next slide will have some things that we really need. So some of the things we need are, you know, like I said, we're ready. We know the type of structure we need, we know the type of building we need, but what we really truly need is the people-powered legal and technical support. So we need commercial real estate experts. We need people who can help us understand the legalities of acquiring land and holding it. Sometimes we need like someone who's a movement-friendly broker to help us understand what people are telling us on the other end of the line. This isn't our special, you know, our expertise. We're, you know, activists and organizers. We need people who understand the language of real estate. And additionally, beyond just like buying land and moving it into a trust, we need to really make sure that Mayday is prepared internally to hold a building and really make sure we do this right, because we've spent a lot of time talking to folks who have done this before, and there have been a lot of lessons that are learned, and we've spent time like understanding those. And so we really need to make sure that we are organized internally to really hold that successfully and make sure that this project can live into the future. So I don't know if I'm kicking it back over to Rahel or LJ, but these are our needs. We're looking for folks to join our team. We're looking for experts who can really help us move forward. Like, we are ready to go. We're actively looking. We just need a little bit of support to get us there. And, you know, we're super excited to continue our relationship and partnership with REIC, and very, very excited for what you all are doing. And yeah, just hoping we can move forward together.
So I'm gonna, in the interest of time, thank you so much, Mayday. I'm gonna drop a Google Sheet in the chat, and folks can put their email addresses and contact information in there, and then from there you'll be connected to Mayday going forward. Does that sound all right? Mayday organizers, and keeping in mind specifically what Sandy just mentioned, they need assistance with. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Mara, and thank you, Mayday. This is amazing, very excited. Next up is Educated Little Monsters, and before we get started, I just want to note that we're gonna hear from Educated Little Monsters, and after that, we're gonna do a mutual aid swap. So maybe you have things you need, resources you want to share. We'll put some music on, do a little bit of PowerPoint, kind of collective PowerPointing, and like talk about kind of some shared capacity. And then after that, we'll talk about ways to get involved, furthering the REIC. If you're really interested in this and want to be part of this, to figure out ways to support organizations and collective purchase building. So just want to put that on your radar, that we'll have a kind of collective brainstorming and talking sessions afterward. So, okay, great, wonderful. Next up is Educated Little Monsters. Very excited. Jazz will take it away.
Okay, can you hear me? Everybody can hear me? Perfect. All right, cool. All right, so this is my first time doing something like this, so I'm a little nervous, but here we go. There's a lot of people in the room. Thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to share visibility with what we do. So as they said, my name is Jazz. I'm the founder of Educated Little Monsters, and I just took over Arts in Bushwick, which runs Bushwick Open Studios, and we have a lot of outbreaking projects because one of the most important things about Educated Little Monsters was creating sustainability and economical platforms that will allow us to survive just because, you know, we were able to build things that were able to generate money to keep us sustainable and going. One of the biggest goals for us is building equity, starting up capital, you know, ownership is really important. Being from, you know, I was born in Puerto Rico, but been living in Brooklyn since I was like 5 months. I'm originally from Brownsville, East New York. That's where I was raised. So one of the goals is to eventually start programming over there. But I moved to Bushwick. I mean, I've always been in and out of Bushwick growing up in Brooklyn, but I actually moved to Bushwick in 2006. And 2013 was when we started the program because as the community began to change, we noticed that a lot of the things that were popping up in our communities weren't inclusive to the needs of the people who are from here. So we also feel like we want to be a model to other gentrified Black and Brown communities that are underrepresented or underserved, that get lack of resources, to give them like that hope and be that story like many other people that can show resilience and also show a sense of surviving in our communities and getting piece of ownership. So we can go to the next slide. So Educate a Little Monster. I'm gonna try to like rush through this because, you know, I want you guys to, I don't want to hold everyone up. So ELM is a local grassroots movement dedicated to providing artistic outlets and economic opportunity for under-resourced youth of color while empowering them to become socially responsible leaders who are aware of the changes affecting them in their communities. That's really important. We don't want to be just a regular after-school program. I'm a mom. I started ELM back in 2013 when our areas began getting gentrified and, you know, people from a different demographic began calling the police and didn't want the kids to play. You know, they were getting in trouble for things that they were born and raised doing in our community. So we decided that the way that we fight that is creating more resources for the youth that were being also displaced. So building economical platforms for them and showing them that they can come from a community that where they can start off small and eventually grow and also, you know, become employed. And also allowing them a space to heal, a space to keep them safe, a space that allows them to be angry and talk about the changes that are affecting them, because gentrification comes with a lot of racism, a lot of injustice. It also changes the policing in our community. That was one of the reasons the police was being called consistently on kids, you know. So we, as a mom, I felt like it was important for them to have a space to express themselves. So they were as young as 11 and 12 writing songs about displacement, gentrification, you know, police brutality. So that's why we were, you know, it's important for them to understand the things that are happening in their community because they didn't know the language. They seen what was happening, but they didn't know how to express the anger that they felt. So I felt like as a mom that youth deserve artistic resources, especially in such a gentrified community where there's so much music and art, but it's only accessible to a certain demographic of people. So you can go to the next slide. This slide is a little bit old. So we did start in 2013. We have served way over 500 youth. This slide is probably like 3 years old, 2 years old. We haven't updated it in a little while. From here to then, we've serviced so many youth, and it's definitely more than 500 through mentorship, classes, and community events. We do a lot of community events. We allow the youth in the community to curate their own events. And also, you know, as the economical ways of making money in our communities change, we want them to have access to those things. So, you know, booking out venues to do their own shows. There's so many DIY spaces in the community, and I just want them to have the same resources. So Elm serves as a way, as a home away from home, you know, like this is like their house. You know, they come here, they create, they don't leave. There's some of them in the basement right now working out, and they pretty much don't age out. Displacing, it's for youth whose neighborhoods are rapidly changing, displacing not only families, but after school opportunities for youth of color. Elm gives these youth a place for their voices to be heard through visual arts, dance, music, theater. Now we have a new film department. Students are empowered to become leaders, and they eventually, when they get a certain age, we got to a place where we started getting grants, and the kids who grew up in the program were now the ones getting paid to lead it when they turned like 19, 20. Yeah, you can go to the next one. So these are like quotes from some of the youth that actually grew up in the program. The movement has taught kids how to love themselves and their talent. Over time, Elm has empowered the community, the kids in the community, regardless of race or gender. The movement has taught kids how to love themselves and their talents. It also taught them how to be confident with their talent, how expressing their feelings through art isn't a bad thing. You can go to the next one. This is Josh. He is actually 22 now, going on 23. Elm, when we talk about grassroots, like we're such a grassroots program. I've known Josh since he was 9. I started this program with kids on my block, and we sat on the steps and they told me what they wanted and we did it. So I've known him, like I said, since he was 9. He was about 15 when the program actually started, and he became a part of it. And he was part of the hip hop program. He participated in pretty much every workshop, like many of the other kids. And he also graduated to the older monsters, which are the kids who are more professional. We do a lot of events, we book a lot of spaces. And he's now one of the mentors. When he has the chance, he still comes back and mentors the younger generation of Elm. You can go to the next one. This is something he said. It became a family over the years. Elm has empowered children to express themselves and take advantage of their art. With the help of selected teachers, they have been able to build on their talents and learn more about community, part of the community. It slowly became a music program where we were able to write and record our own voices. Over the years, our bonds grew, and it became more of a family than a program. And in turn, we grew within it. That's the reason I've stuck with the program, because it became family. You can go to the next slide. These are just like shots of things that we were doing. We were in a really big building, and were on the process of taking it over. It was called Silent Barn. It was a very well-known, infamous DIY music venue, but it was a very white run space that wasn't inclusive. And it was one of the spaces that I had conversations with and explained to them that if they really wanted to be an inclusive space, that they need to allow people that are actually from the community to come in. And it was a hard fight. There was some resistance, but overall people felt that they agreed with the idea that you can't have such an open space where people are traveling from all over the world, booking events, people as young as 16, 17 years old, but the youth from here have absolutely no access. So we took over a lot of space because it was a non-hierarchical space. Again, that came with a lot of strings attached, being a Puerto Rican girl from Brooklyn with very different language. There was a lot of microaggressions and a lot of ways that systematic racism was used to keep our voices down in the youth that we worked with. And again, we just continue pushing the button and having those uncomfortable conversations. So we actually took over part of the calendar team, in which we were able to book events, and took over back of the space where it was a bunch of studios. We rented some of the biggest studios, and we had our own recording studio, their own art studio upstairs. They had like it was called a Princess Corner, where they would watch TV, and it was a fashion station. And they had instrument classes. We did dance classes. We had, like, again, our own recording studio. You can go to the next slide. And then we had visual arts. We're a full performing visual arts program. At this time, we didn't have our film department. We do now. They've already produced their first short film. And we feel that it's important that people of color are leading these movements, that we're the ones that are on top of these nonprofits, and that we stay in creative control of what it is that we do. And those were the things that we pressured during Silent Barn. So you can go to the next slide. Short-term goals are build capacity, grow teaching artists, expand programming to offer music classes. I would love to be open like every single day. We don't have the money or the resources to do so. Continue semester-long curriculums in which students write and record original music, create original theater scenes, shoot music, again, films, do murals. These are things that have been updated, and choreograph dance pieces. And I'll let you watch these videos now. They're short. Because I feel like they'll really explain the mission and what we've been fighting for. And it's actually kind of like crazy that these videos are 2 years old and we're still fighting the same fight, which is why we got to a point where we were like, we have to own, because we, like ELM as a grassroots program that started on the steps with actual kids from the streets that we knew, that we helped raise. Like, we are so displaced, like we can't even name the amount of spaces that we've been into. So you can go to the next slide. And these are long-term goals. And again, like, it's kind of emotional to even look at this, because these have been our goals since we've started the program. We started in 2013, you know, and we did this deck maybe like 2-3 years ago. So long-term goals is to save up to buy a building in Brooklyn, Bushwick preferably, because we're from there, in which ELM can run all music and art programming, including pop-up classes, closed classes, private lessons, and intensive. That's exactly how we ran Silent Barn. It was a storefront that had a music venue. We did a bunch of events from youth to young adults, while there were kids in the back having instrument classes or doing recording studio sessions. We had like breakout rooms. We had a house recording and dance studios built in. And we also want to provide housing for 4 to 6 youth that are from 18 to 22 that are homeless. Silent Barn had a residency upstairs, and we were able to take over an apartment at that time. And we had 2 girls that grew up in our program from 15 years old who were kicked out in the streets, who lived. We were constantly finding them shelter until they turned 18, and we took over an apartment, and we started a deal with Silent Barn where we would be able to access the calendar, do certain amount of events to create low income and residency for the youth, the young adults that we had put into, it was called the Monster House apartment. Silent Barn ended up closing, and when that happened, we lost everything. And these videos that you're going to see will show you the story of ELM and what we were trying to protect and save at that time, but people with more access, people with more capital, people who just moved into the neighborhood that had a sense of language, and again, had access to resources that we didn't, convince the landlord to not rent to us. And we lost the space and had to move. So you can play the videos.
So this is like the end of the day for the younger monsters, but no one really goes home. You can see like these guys right here. These are all the older monsters that now get to use the space as more professional artists. I'm like their bodyguard, and I'm just protecting their magic.
Where we're at is a place called the Silent Barn. It's a DIY space, and also it's a place where Educated Little Monsters has been running out of for the past 5 years. Educated Little Monsters is like, it's a family, a community.
To me, it's a family. It's a family, it's a movement. It's just a statement, you feel me? It's community. We're doing music, we're doing dance. We have instrument lessons and theater classes.
Educated Little Monsters is a full performing visual arts program that's located in Bushwick. Our goal is to create resources and platforms for Native youth of color in gentrified communities that are being displaced.
Currently, ELM is losing their space. We had a partnership with Silent Barn where we would have the space a certain amount of times during the week, but Silent Barn, they weren't able to hold the lease down. So right now what we're trying to do is raise money to take over that lease and take over the whole first floor.
ELM didn't start as a program with any resources, space. It was just a, girl from Brooklyn who is a mom, and started seeing the changes in the community and started seeing how they weren't inclusive for the youth and the people that are actually born and raised in this area. Seeing the growth in Bushwick, but not being a part of that growth and not really being able to take advantage of the scene that was happening. Our goal right now is to take over the lease at Silent Barn once they're closed and running a full performing visual arts program and a venue catering Native people of color from the city.
So Jazz is basically the founder, well, not basically, Jazz is the founder of this program. But to me, Jazz is like a second mom to me. She's always there. She's always there. If I have problems, she's there. Music-wise, she's there. Like she's just like, she's like our guardian angel. She want to protect us.
Sometimes I just stand here and just watch them. And they don't even care no more. I do love them like they're my kids though.
It's important for to try to stay in this space because this has been our home for the past 6 years. Like, it was primarily a white-run space. Like, there was no room in here for black and brown bodies when they first came in. We reinvented it, so now it's like black and brown bodies feel safe here. Like, minorities feel comfortable in this place. Like, this is somewhere where everybody comes to, like, just feel comfortable and vibe and chill. We made it so that people like us feel comfortable here inside a community that's being so gentrified.
Silent Barn, you know, has its own community, and when Silent Barn closes, like, people move on. They'll go to another gentrified venue and, you know, bartend and create art. We don't get to do that.
If we can't renew the lease, if we can't raise the money, it's like we're getting kicked out of the home that we've had for years.
People in the community can stay in the community and build in it if they want to.
We want to fight for stability. That's not something that we've ever had in the past, and I think it's the most important thing that people of color need in their communities so they can be able to make efficient changes in their communities without being displaced. Elm is everything that they said that they couldn't be. Elm is music, Elm is art, Elm is creativity. Elm is black and brown excellence unapologetically. And Elm is empowerment.
Probably. You can go into the, I don't know if you guys can see me, but so I told you they don't go home. Like these are the older monsters, but you can just go into the next slide. I mean, not the next slide, the next video, yeah, just go straight into it. And you can go straight into the other one once this is done, so it just goes straight through.
It's basically to empower kids in their communities, black and brown youth that are being displaced through gentrification, white influx, and showing them ways to reclaim their community through music and art in ways that people typically wouldn't listen. I run Educate Little Monsters. It's a full performing visual arts program. We have musical theater, live band, instruments, hip hop, dance.
Every single time a space, like a venue or a gallery or a coffee shop opens up, you're actively seeing people be pushed out.
Safe spaces is the most important thing that we can give the youth, especially youth of color, who are no longer identifying with the changes in their community.
She basically just like takes over this whole space with all these kids, and they just hang out and have a lot of space to do whatever they want. It's the kind of program that I think that I would have really benefited from having as a kid.
Jazz, the person that founded the group, she lived up the block from me, and I was friends with her son. So we always used to just play on the block and stuff, and then it started off as like a poetry group, and I came because I wrote and I like poetry, but like I slowly was like, you should put a beat on it, like you should put some music to it. It's not like the average like adult like trying to put a limitation on a child. Like, she saw the potential. Like she always says now, like, we have superpowers. Any talent anybody has is like a power, like, and you're using it to create something. So she saw that and was like, all right, y'all choose what y'all want to do. I'm just here to be the platform to get y'all to give visibility to like the community and stuff.
It was my first taste of really being outside of my own element. I started rapping basically just putting videos up on YouTube and on my Instagram. So this was like the first time I was around other people and other people were actually like hearing what I had to say. It was a little awkward because that, like, I've never freestyled before then. So when I went over there and I was freestyling with other people, like I was messing up a lot, but everybody over there was like a real community vibe, and like they encouraged me to keep going and get better. From day one, like they've been there for me. It was like at a time where I really didn't have anybody on my side, like they were always there. And it's like, it's been more than just a hip hop program. It's been more than just a music program. It's like, it's been like a family for me.
You just bring your talent and people just help you out with your talent. They don't tell you how to write, they don't tell you how to act, they don't tell you how to dance, how to sing. It's you just come and be yourself. I've been through a lot. Me growing up when I was younger, my dad was abusive. My parents, they didn't accept me for being gay. So they kicked me and my girlfriend out, and we was homeless for like 2 years. It just gives me life. I love seeing people that I know. I love creating with other people. I just love making music in general, and I feel like this space gives me that platform.
I've seen them be able to stand up and speak about things that they haven't been able to in the past because they were taught that they're not allowed to. I've seen them sit together and resolve issues in ways that we're taught we're not supposed to do. I've seen them protect each other. I've just seen so much resilience and so much leadership. I don't feel like I'm creating a culture. I feel like I'm preserving what hip-hop was always supposed to be, which was a voice for the oppressed and people of color.
One. Just go right into the next one. This one is...
It's basically to empower kids.
Oh, is it? This one is Color Scenes Mural Fest, and this is the art community that we also build.
Hey, Jazz, quick question. Is for the interest of time, is there a good chunk of this that you feel like would be wonderful to highlight? Like a portion?
No, but this is literally the last thing.
Okay.
Images, so it would be the last thing out. I really wouldn't have.
Sounds great. Let's go through it.
My son, and like, this is cool. And then the area started changing. I remember the first thing that opened up on our block was Little Skips, a cafe. And it was cool because, like, again, we didn't have no premeditated ill manner in our heads to be like, we don't want certain people in our community. Like, it was just like, yo, this is dope. Like, this shit is happening. Like, there's no cafes in the hood. You know, like all these dope little organic spots. So we were like really excited until we really started seeing, like, we were looked at as like, we were looked at like if we were the tourists. You know, so the Color Scenes Mural Festival is an extension of Color Scenes, which we've already been doing for about a year. The reason we started Color Scenes was to give Black and brown artists a platform to create visibility for them to get their art in the streets. And what's happening is that there's like a big street art movement in gentrified areas, and they're not using the artists within the community. They're using a lot of artists that are not bringing cultural relevance, and it's not representing the people from the community. So Color Scenes decided to use their own platform and visibility to create those resources. Because another thing that happened was when we did get walls and we were able to give them the visibility, they didn't have the money to buy the paint. Spray paint, particularly because we work with a lot of graffiti artists, having big walls and big projects like that requires a lot of paint, and sometimes that's a budget that we don't have. So we were tired of waiting for other people to give us resources, grants. When we were trying to get resources or grants, they'd be depleted. And the people who were able to like benefit off of those grants were people that aren't from the community. So we decided to say fuck the system, fuck the government. We decided not to wait on resources, and we decided to do it on our own. So we started doing shows, and every 2 months from the proceeds we would buy spray paint and we would sponsor artists to do murals within the Bushwick community or their own community. And I've been working out of Silent Barn for almost 3 years, which is a very DIY, hipster, white-run space. And one of the things that's special about Silent Barn is that they've allowed Black and brown bodies to come in and like revolutionize the space and they've allowed Black and brown bodies to come in and actually take up space in a very white-run community. And the conversations were uncomfortable and a lot of people quit. But a lot of people stood and decided that they wanted to see people of color that are actually from the community in power. So those are the type of like allyships that we've been able to build with gentrified businesses in Bushwick. So the Mural Fest was literally about bridging the gaps between like color scenes, Silent Barn, Bushwick street art, and showing how new communities coming in, old communities, and arts from all mediums can literally like coexist without hierarchy. Because another thing that's a problem with the art scene in Bushwick is you have to be of some certain kind of like collaborator, or you have to meet like this criteria, or you have to be like on this list. And half of the time when they make that list, we're never on it, but you're in our community. So we wanted to change the focus of that. So Color Scenes Mural Fest was literally about reclaiming a very white-run space and showing cultural relevance through the art that we're creating. So the proposal to Silent Barn literally was like, can we come in as community members and reclaim the culture and the art within the space? And Silent Barn was down for it.
So you can just go through the slide until you get to the second to last picture. These are just pictures of the artists. Keep going. This is the final, go back real quick. That is the final project. We did this all on our own. We raised our own money. Silent Barn had no creative control. That was part of taking over the space. And sadly, we lost this space in negotiation when they decided to give it up. And as you can see, like the front of it has the apartments on the side where all of the art is on the side. There was more apartments. This gate has a huge backyard in it, which showed in the video. We had the studios all the way in the back, and then the front was the storefront. So that's the same model we want to keep. You can go down. We decided to start a campaign with this company called With Friends. They were actually old Silent Barn leaseholders, which they helped us raise at that time $50,000, so that way we can take over the space. We raised $50,000 in 3 weeks, and the only way that we were able to raise that money was because we kind of put Silent Barn in a position to use their privilege and to use their accessibility of visibility, because we know that what we're doing is important. We've survived because of all of the extra events that we've built on the side to keep capital of our buildings. But we don't have the visibility. A lot of the publications, a lot of people won't support our message because it's actually speaking against what they benefit from. So we are very political, you know, we have a very, it's not that we want a label, but we are very radical. We do not get support from hardly any politicians because again, we are very raw, we are very upfront, so we want to be able to own. These are testimonies that people have wrote, people have begun donating to see us own. You can go to the next slide, and then you can go to the last slide. And this is a mock-up of a building that I drew because this is the dream, like literally, like this is the dream. And it's literally what we were already building at Silent Barn. This image isn't far from the other picture that we've seen. So music venue, we want a media. These are all the things that we're actively doing right now out of our little ass space. So our goal is to have 300 members that pay up to $20 a month, so that way we can stabilize at least an income of $3,000 a month to keep the hub that we're in, that we've created so many resources out of, until we campaign and organize until we own. So we are trying to get more members, and we really need a lot of resources with people who have access to press and visibility, because our story tells itself. And we really believe that if we had more access to more people and knew about our story, that we would have a lot more donations and we would have a lot more support. So thank you for everyone that's in this group and all the 56 people that were able to learn about Elm's story today that didn't know about us yesterday. And I'm gonna end there.
Yay, thank you. Thank you so much. This is very exciting. Thank you, Mayday. Thank you, Educated Little Monsters. Very excited to share. This slide, I know everyone has access to the slides, and this is a way to connect, be part of the mailing list, connect and become a supporter. We're going to try to end at 10, and I'll facilitate us, and we're going to do a breakout room, but we won't actually do it. We'll kind of go on to the next part, but I will just read out this phrase out loud. If you were to volunteer and work at a community organization, what's something you would like to do? And maybe that is a good segue into what we wanted to do next, which is two things. One is a brainstorm and mutual aid swap, and the next is like working groups. And so what we're going to do in this one, and maybe we'll just do it for the next 5 minutes. So we're going to try this out, kind of like the start of the meeting, but we would love to do a mutual aid swap. So in this meeting, there are a lot of folks who have a lot of different enthusiasm, skills, resources, thoughts bringing here. And we wanted to do a little bit of a mutual aid swap, specifically focused on the REIC and Mayday Space and Educated Little Monsters. So we have these 3 slides. This is something you're looking for, some resources you need, something you can personally share or offer. Maybe you can say, oh, I am a broker, or like, I know how to look at spaces, or I know to organize. Or a resource you might know of that might be helpful. So maybe it's not something you personally know, but you'd like to share with everyone. That's a link to some resource. So maybe the idea is to spend about like 5 minutes doing a little bit of a mutual aid swap. We can post the URL for the slides back in here. Yeah, we'll do this for about let's say like 4 minutes until like 9:58. So just kind of like type in like what is something you're looking for? What is something you can personally share or offer? And what is a resource you might know of? So let's...
And I'd like to formally invite one of our members to just verbally, as well as in this format, give an offering. Oscar, I know you've offered to give a working group or a training at some point around how to pitch to groups that actually have capital, have money, specifically investment capital, which may or may not be appropriate to all groups. Donation capital may be most appropriate to some. But Oscar, you could also pitch that, and I'll also add a slide. Anyone who's interested can add their contact info there as well. And Oscar, I don't know if you want to give like a 2-second or anything about information that might, like a teaser around pitching to investor groups or anything like that.
Hi everyone. Hi Todd. I'm sorry. I guess what I think we're going to talk about later with one of the working groups is actually pitch for the real estate investment cooperative to raise capital from members of each other. And I guess as part of that group, we can also talk about some of the things we'll be talking about in that working group will be applicable to anyone who's actually raising capital from investors, or just, by investors, I really mean anybody you can think of who might have, a spare $100 or $50 or even less. We're talking about raising very small amounts of capital and pooling it together, and whatever anyone can contribute as investors is meaningful. So I guess that's what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about later in the working group. So if anyone is interested, I guess I'll put my email in the chat, and hopefully you'll be able to participate in the investment recruitment work, and we'll be able to kind of share knowledge about pitching. So I hope that covers what we're thinking about.
Thanks, Oscar. So I see some energy in the slides. And you can share a few things. We're talking about being a real estate agent, ways of holding, maintaining, and building together, intake form for specific legal service needs for movement organizations. Anyone can come in and ask for something you're looking for. So you can also, if you're a person looking for this and want to be contacted, you could put your email address here. So some groups need graphic design support, so you can maybe someone who wrote that can write like who that is. ELM is looking for someone to help design a website. An ally real estate lawyer. So we'll try this out for a little bit and see if you all have any other things to add. And yes, these resources will be available for later viewing. The Google Slides link is actually, this will stay here, so you can always access the slide again. Paula says, if you need a building code expert to help you evaluate a building, I can connect you with an expert who has lower rates for nonprofits. Amazing. Educated Little Monsters needs help with grant writers and fundraising. Is this something you can offer, or you can work on, you may be interested in thinking about together? Feel free to add here. And then over the course of future meetings, we'll also continue to add to this mutual aid swap, so feel free to write your email or name, and this can kind of be a continuous resource. Okay, let's try this for 30 more seconds, and then we'll keep on going. Really appreciate all the kind of ideas that are coming out here. Okay, so the near to last step, penultimate step, everyone. So working group. So what's next? We've shared a little bit about the REIC. We've seen a bunch of stuff from Educated Little Monsters and Mayday Space. So what's next, and how do we get this going? How do we talk about the REIC? We're talking about ways to move forward in terms of these three working groups. We'll continue to meet with the structure, but I just want to really quickly introduce what they will be. So there's this idea of three different working groups. And then if you're interested, you can either write your name in the chat, rename an email in the chat, or sign up here. So the first one is idea of a reading group and screening group. Mara, maybe you can introduce this really briefly.
Sure, and just to learn more about topics related to spatial equity, the city, redlining, urban renewal history, watch movies about different neighborhoods, anything related to topics, we'd come up with the curriculum together and read together, watch together.
Next is the Outreach and Finding Capacity Working Group, which maybe Raf and Todd can talk about for a second.
I'd love to. Yeah, so the purpose of this group would be to, for the reasons listed, but basically to think about like when you want to get into the technical and the nitty gritty of connecting a group to a space, specifically a group that might need additional investment raising that could utilize the charter that we have or the approval that we have. That would be really appropriate for this group, as well as groups that are looking for space and are looking for expertise. I think we could look at this space as matching those two needs and a place to connect, as well as share skills, as well as magnify skills where people could like bring people into new projects or something like that that are looking to get more involved. So basically in terms of like the purpose of this group would be to say, if you need help, like brokers, as Mayday Space said, or other sorts of specific skills, social media outreach, but also just like more technical skills like that, this would be a good space for, if you need those skills or if you have those skills, we would love to have you in this group, and please put your information here. We'll reach out to you. We'll schedule a time to talk. The idea would be probably a group talk, as Dan is saying, although if you have specific needs or considerations, let those be known, and we can accommodate those as well.
Great, and then the last one is this idea of barn raising or starting a project group. So the idea is, you know, if we have a potential project, how do we move it forward? This group may come a little bit after the previous group, but it's essentially the idea of like, how can we create the structure of creating the CLT and supporting an organization in maintaining and continuing their building. So if you have a potential project, how do we vet it? How do we move it forward? This will involve project management, managing projects, having community, thinking about buildings, helping design or alter buildings, things like that. This is kind of a work group around that idea. So yes, if you're interested, feel free to email us or add your name and email below. So those are the working groups that we currently have planned. I'm mindful of everyone's time because it's 10:04 and we said we'd end at 10 in the chat. So we have some other ideas that maybe you have planned, but just kind of want to overall say, like, we have some working groups idea. We are meeting regularly. And so if you are interested, please email us and sign up, and we will figure out a time. And then as we close, I would just say one more thing is that we will have a next all-member and general check-in on August 5th, so about a month from now. So we'll have meetings within our working groups, talk a little bit, and then I'll have like an overall check-in at 8 p.m. on August 5th, 2020, which is in a month, but I'm sure will come very soon. So that's the overall structure of the REIC. Thanks for sticking us through. I want to do kind of a, I want to ask if any other of my collaborators want to share anything, and if not, we can close soon. Any last thoughts?
My only last is just to say thank you all for the time this evening. We appreciate it. In my mind, this is a way of, you know, being in community, even despite the fact of being virtual and things like that. So thank you so much, and hope you enjoy the evening and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Yeah, so thank you for coming. Thank you to Mayday and Educated Little Monsters for sharing. And then in our next meeting, we'll continue to meet, have some updates, have some more interactive kind of sharing. And also, I will say, feel free to stick around for a little bit if you want to be part of the after party. But I will say we can close our time here today. Thank you so much for coming. And please, please support Mayday and Educated Little Monsters and what they do.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks y'all so much.
Let's get the music back. We can hang.
Yes, the bar.
You read my mind, Mara.
Hey y'all, thank you.
Bye, LJ. Thank you.
What could we talk about?
You know, almost anything I want to try, I'm welcome to do it. You know, so that's the freedom is helping. I heard you were split